More than 4 months have passed since Sunita Williams and Barry Wilmore got stuck in space. On June 5th, this test flight launches, and the next day, on June 6th, as the Boeing Starliner reaches the International Space Station, while the spacecraft is propelling, some thrusters suddenly stop working. Shortly after, it's discovered that there are some leaks in the helium line through which helium flows. Helium is a type of gas that keeps the spacecraft's fuel system pressurized, ensuring that the fuel can reach the engine properly. As soon as the astronauts confirm this, they immediately begin docking their spacecraft at the International Space Station. But then they suddenly see on their monitor screen that one after another, 5 reaction control system thrusters have failed. The good news was that their 23 remaining RCS thrusters were still working. Before Sunita Williams and Barry Wilmore could dock their spacecraft with the ISS, 8 more thrusters failed, with one not even firing. At this point, Sunita Williams and Barry Wilmore had no idea that their lives were about to become a nightmare because their mission was only supposed to last 8 days. So they had limited resources, and now it's been over 4 months. They are facing multiple illnesses, and the main reason behind all this is the helium leakage. But do you know what's the most shocking part? Just 4 days before Sunita Williams and Barry Wilmore were set to embark on their 8-day mission, on June 1st, the Boeing Starliner team detected a helium leak in the spacecraft. This raises the question, despite the helium leak, why was the spacecraft still launched? And how is this 8-day mission now turning into a 10-month ordeal? Recently, NASA announced that Sunita Williams and Barry Wilmore will return to Earth in February 2025. What exactly was this mission, and who is to blame for all this? Let's find out everything in today's video. This mission was jointly conducted by Boeing Company and NASA. It's called CST-100 Starliner, where CST stands for Crew Space Transportation, and 100 refers to the Kármán line, which is the official boundary of space, 100 kilometers above Earth. Basically, it's a crewed spacecraft designed and developed by Boeing. Its main purpose is to safely transport astronauts to the International Space Station, ISS, and bring them back to Earth. This spacecraft is part of NASA's Commercial Crew Program, which aims to enable the United States to transport its astronauts to the ISS using its own spacecraft without relying on Russia's Soyuz spacecraft. The Soyuz spacecraft is a Russian crewed vehicle operated by Roscosmos, Russia's space agency. It was developed in the 1960s and has remained a reliable and widely used vehicle for human spaceflight since then. Boeing started developing the Starliner around 2010 as a replacement when NASA invited proposals for its Commercial Crew Program. The main objective was to develop a spacecraft that was safe, cost-effective, and reusable. The development work started in 2010, and after 9 years, it was tested for the first time in 2019 without crew members. It underwent multiple tests, which I'll discuss further. After multiple tests, the launch date was finally set for June 5th, and the Boeing Starliner CST-100 was launched with the United Launch Alliance ULA Atlas V rocket from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, Florida. Indian-American NASA astronaut Sunita Williams and Barry Wilmore were chosen for this mission. Shortly after the launch, some serious technical problems emerged. The first issue was the thruster failure. This spacecraft had 28 reaction control system thrusters, out of which 5 had failed. Thrusters are an integral part of a spacecraft's control system. If the spacecraft's thrusters do not work properly or fail, it becomes difficult to maintain the orientation of the spacecraft. Maintaining orientation is essential because the spacecraft's communication antennas, solar panels, and other instruments need to be pointed in the right direction. If this is not done, the entire spacecraft could be destroyed. But in this case, the remaining 23 reaction control system thrusters were still working, allowing Sunita Williams and Barry Wilmore to handle the situation well. Shortly after, another major problem emerged: helium leakage. After the launch, helium leaks were detected in the spacecraft's propulsion system. A total of 5 helium leaks were identified, with one being quite significant, leaking at a rate of 395 pounds per square inch per minute. Helium in the spacecraft is like fuel. If it runs out, both astronauts' lives would be at risk. As I mentioned earlier, during docking, 8 thrusters had also failed, but Sunita Williams and Barry Wilmore, using their expertise, managed to successfully dock the spacecraft with the ISS. But the problem now was, how would these astronauts return? Their mission was only for 8 days, so resources were limited. What would happen now? The Starliner is now docked with the ISS, 400 kilometers above Earth, and no Boeing engineer can go to space to replace or fix the Starliner's faulty parts. Therefore, Sunita Williams and Barry Wilmore were instructed to try fixing the Starliner themselves so they could return safely. Initially, the astronauts made several replacements replacements and changes in the Starliner's pressure control and pump assembly motor. They even managed to repair 4 thrusters. But what about the technical glitches? With more problems emerging, it soon became clear to both the astronauts and NASA that these malfunctions were not minor and would take a significant amount of time to fix. Moreover, these issues could only be resolved by engineers and the technical team on Earth. Multiple crucial parts of the Starliner had already failed. The current situation is that NASA has announced that Sunita Williams and Barry Wilmore will return to Earth in February 2025. Now you might wonder, they went for an 8-day mission, so how will they have food and water until February 2025? How will they survive? Look, for such missions, everything is generally planned, including emergencies. If a situation arises where astronauts go for a 10-day mission but are unable to return due to some issue, there are enough food, water, and medical supplies available on the ISS to ensure their safety. The ISS is a well-equipped facility, with regular cargo missions bringing necessary supplies. So even if they have to stay until February 2025, they will have enough resources. Plus, NASA and space agencies are always prepared for emergencies. If there is any serious health issue, immediate assistance will be provided according to medical protocols, whether for physical or mental health. So, Sunita Williams and Barry Wilmore have enough resources to survive there, and their safety and health will be taken care of until they safely return to Earth. Let me tell you something interesting. If NASA wants, they could bring Sunita Williams and Barry Wilmore back to Earth right now. Actually, during SpaceX's last mission to the ISS, a Dragon spacecraft is already docked there. If NASA requests SpaceX to bring back both astronauts, then the SpaceX Dragon spacecraft could bring them back. But this is where the politics between two companies and the government comes into play. As I mentioned earlier in the video, the Starliner was developed to avoid dependence on Russian spacecraft, and anyway, Russia isn't going to help NASA at all, the reason being sanctions. Since the Ukraine-Russia war started, America and European countries have cut off all their trades and relationships with Russia, imposing strict sanctions. Even if NASA asks for help, Russia will not assist in the return of their astronauts. This means the Russian Soyuz spacecraft is no longer an option for NASA. Now, NASA has 2 options. Either ask for help from SpaceX and use their Dragon spacecraft to bring the astronauts back safely, which would damage Boeing's reputation and jeopardize their over $1 billion investment in this project, or wait until February. For now, NASA has stated that they will bring the astronauts back with SpaceX in February 2025 if Boeing's Starliner is not fixed by then. You know what I think? Competition and rivalry aside, the most important thing right now is to bring back astronauts Barry Wilmore and Sunita Williams to Earth safely.